And we are looking into asking again the question, what can we do post-corona? We cannot just sit and wait for it. I personally, again, see this as an opportunity. And for me, it's an opportunity for personal transformation, personal understanding, and engaging in creating a better future. One of the power sentences that's been coming to my mind in the last 2 days, and I'll end with this, then we can open for questions. And everybody knows this famous statement by Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. Many of us maybe even have it on bumper stickers and hung in our rooms and our homes. And for me, I've been really, really contemplating and meditating on the statement. What does it really mean to be the change that we want to see in this world? Many of us are now looking into what's happening globally, and many of us are saying, here's an opportunity for humans to wake up. Here's an opportunity for us to engage differently with Earth, with the environment, with resources. Here's an opportunity for us to engage differently with each other. But we're looking to the outside. And we're frustrated because we're not seeing it happen on the outside. We're not seeing the decision makers engage in decisions that are ecologically friendly and more friendly to minorities and gender equality and all these things. Well, it begins by me. This is the only thing I can offer. Until I really become the change in me, then nothing, I should not expect anything else to happen. And so for me, I've taken these few weeks as a deep opportunity in asking, who is the being that I will be once this ends? And I will encourage all of you to do this. What are the deep things in my own life that I want to change, transform, to heal, so I can begin to engage differently in this world? And if many of us do this, this is when we will see the effect. In a sense, we are the world. This room is the people that will make the change. So I just want to give you this encouragement when it comes to working for peace in the Middle East and ending the occupation here and establishing the sense of justice and security for all the people who live in this land, Palestinians and Israelis alike, or in your community. Don't look for anything to happen on the outside if you are not ready to take the steps yourself.
Sami, thank you so much for painting a picture, a somewhat grim picture of the situation there, but also trying to give us hope and direction for moving forward. At this time, we'd like to open up questions from the floor. Mark Braverman, who says, hi, Sami, it's good to see you, your face and hear your voice. I agree with you that the pandemic is yet another opportunity for resistance on an international level to bring the situation to the awareness of the world. Do you have any specific or general ideas about the shape that can take and what organizations could be mobilized to lead this?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's so good to hear from you. Well, I think many of you know Mark and many others are involved with many organizations, if it's Kairos, if it's NonViolence International, if it's Homeland Trust, and many of the networks that are here all across the world. I think the opportunity for us is to revisit as activists what our campaigns have been about. And then this is something many of us have been talking about for some time. Many of us as activists are still engaging in promoting, because this is the only thing that had been available for us, is the political two-state solution. Many of us are still calling for the occupation to end, for the establishment of a Palestinian state next to Israel, and thinking this is going to be the answer for peace. It could be an answer for peace. As I said before, I strongly doubt it, and I think that many of us also believe the feasibility of the two states is not the answer. The opportunity for us now, as we are experiencing this situation, and again, as we said before, it affects everybody, to really engage in campaigns and activities that promote human rights, civil rights, equal rights for all the people in this land. This is what I would encourage us to get engaged in. And at this time, where we are experiencing discrimination and asymmetry in the distribution of resources, Yesterday, for example, I was on a call that included Palestinians who live inside Israel itself, Palestinians, 1948 Palestinians who live from Haifa to the Negev. And the reality that they are facing, and there were 10 people on that call from different areas, the reality is they are facing is that they, even as Israeli citizens, are facing discrimination from the Israeli medical field because of the testing. Only 9 results have come out from very limited tests of Palestinians who live inside Israel who are carrying the virus. And the big fear that many of them have is that this thing is spreading as a form of a flu in their communities, and within a week or two, there's going to be collapse of the Arab population inside Israel as a result of this, and that they will not get the necessary medical treatment. So sadly, again, I would say, while many Israelis are very positive and engaging, and when I say Israel, I want to be very specific. For me, I mean the establishment itself. It's not about the people. I know many, many Israeli Jews who are reaching out. Yesterday, I talked with an Israeli woman who has taken a Palestinian family into her home. So there are people that are doing amazing, amazing things. But at the level of the establishment, there is again the preferential treatment. And sadly, the speech of the Israeli government over the last, well, let's see how many elections they've had in the last 2 years since the first election. So they've had 3 or 4 rounds of elections, has been a language of discrimination, especially by Netanyahu. So when you create a culture of preference, of discrimination against a group of people, that sadly trickles down into the medical field, it trickles down into society, it trickles down into charity. Why should we care about them? Now it's only about caring about us, and who we are is worthy to keep, and the others, it's all right, let them deal with it. And so within Israel itself, we are seeing this. This is why, for me, the campaigns that I would encourage us to engage in is to demand everything that is under Israel's control, all the Palestinians that live under Israel's control, the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, be treated as equal and receive equal treatment. This can begin to create maybe a possibility of building up to new peace. When we begin to see each other as equal and having rights here, and in our humanity really being equal, and we all have the right to live here, and that medical treatment should not be for one on the price of the other, then that can begin to move things around. So whatever information that you could get, resources that you could get that shows this issue of discrimination, you could be in touch with me, you could be in touch with NonViolence International. We'll try to get as much information for you to campaign on social media on the discrimination and racism that is taking place now, and to begin to demand Israel to engage and to comply with human rights, civil rights, and equal rights for all the people here.
from Lynn Gottlieb. Reparations and land sovereignty are very resonant for me and others. I believe in grassroots reparations by the Jewish and Christian community to Palestine. What would that mean to you, Sami?
For me, when it's about land reparations, for me, again, it falls into the realm of having equal rights as Palestinians in this land. Many people might disagree with what I'm going to say now, but for me, I believe that this whole land from the river to the sea is called Palestine. Like for many Israelis, this whole land from the river to the sea is called Israel. The fact that we bought into and were convinced to go in a process called the two-state solution, and I would say as a compromise, even for both communities, it was a compromise. For the Jewish community, as many of us know, there is more religious holy sites in the West Bank than all of Israel combined. And the fact that this was going to be negotiated in a secular political process by either creating access to Jews to come into this land that would limit the Palestinian rights in this land or limit the rights of Jews to come and pray in their sites is for me something that doesn't work and would not have worked. So for me, I believe that when it comes to land reparations and appropriation, we have to engage in a just solution that again is based on the rights and equality for all the people here. Financially, through land, through different mechanisms, we cannot ignore this. Land is important, and I would say land is important not for the sake of a state, because I'm not advocating now for the sake of establishing a Palestinian state. It could be the solution, but it could only start when Palestinians feel that their rights are fully met as equal rights in this entire land. If Israelis have the right to build, Palestinians have the right to build. As many of us know, Palestinians do not have any right to build, even in what are known as the occupied territories, especially Area C, which is 65% of the occupied territory. It is very likely that Israel, the government, might annex these territories, and it could happen even as we are facing this dangerous situation with the virus. Luckily, maybe we could say that so far a unity government hasn't formed in Israel yet to make this decision. But Netanyahu has made this as part of his campaign promises that he will begin taking land and making it become part of the state of Israel. This would eliminate even more and more land for the Palestinians, not in the form of a state, but in terms of access, in terms of congestion, in terms of building. Our cities are becoming very congested in areas A. For example, in Bethlehem, as many of you know, or maybe not know, since 2003, when the segregation wall began to be built, when the separation wall began to be built, not a single new road has been able to be put in Bethlehem. We cannot put roads. And the population has grown since 2003. The number of cars every year, every month increases by 120 cars just in Bethlehem alone, just with the population growth and people buying cars. It's becoming a very congested city, and there is no land for any growth, natural growth, which is again the excuse that the Israeli government uses for settlements, the natural growth of settlements. We don't have that within the Palestinian cities. And so when we talk about land, yes, there should be land and there should be rights of the Palestinians to access to land, to have resources and movement in land. And for me, I would say also land that is within the borders of the state of Israel, where Palestinian villages there and towns are also limited in terms of their expansion and land as well. This is not just something that Palestinians in the West Bank suffer from.
Hi, Sami, good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm trying to think very carefully about your encouraging us to regard this as a moment to approach the Israeli government and lobby them to think of this as an opportunity to do something good, as you know, in the aftermath of COVID. So I guess my question is, do you have any sense of how the recent elections are going to play out and impact how receptive the Israeli government might be to these approaches? And kind of as an aside or a second question, any sense of how we might approach our own governments I'm in the UK, as you know, or Scotland, as I prefer to think. So that's the kind of minor second point, but.
Yeah. So to answer the first point, I don't believe whatever government is going to be formed in the state of Israel will be one that will be opened to engaging and giving rights to the Palestinians, as many of us believe should be. And again, I go back to that point. Power and privilege, no matter where they are, is maintained by people who want to keep it. And it is not easily and voluntarily given. And we've seen this throughout history and throughout the world. This is not something unique for here. So I'm not trying to say this and saying that if I personally have, and I do have privilege in Bethlehem to say this, it becomes very difficult for me to give it up in a situation like this. And so all of us have this experience. The only way is by choice or by something happening, something dramatic happening. And then when we talk about dramatic happening, what we would assume is something either a very traumatic event or very dramatic event. This allows for change to happen. So it could be a dramatic event like a massive movement of nonviolence, or people pulling out their power from the source of power, which is kind of what we hope, because a dramatic nonviolence movement can be successful without hurting many people, except for the privilege, or a very traumatic event, an earthquake, a war changes realities. It also addresses power. I would say that what we're experiencing now with COVID-19 is not a dramatic event, and not a traumatic event to create political change. And this is why advocacy and activism, and it's not even lobbying, because you use the word, I'm not using the word to lobby the Israeli government. It's to put the necessary pressure at this time on the Israeli government to engage in, and maybe not even that concept of peace, but this concept of demanding, like what are you doing to those people that you are responsible for or who are under your responsibility when it comes to addressing this issue of COVID-19, of the virus. And I think this is something that governments should engage in, and we should lobby our governments to engage in this. I know many governments in the UK and the US are not ready to engage in this, but this is where grassroots activism, grassroots movement become very important. We need to engage and continue to engaging in this work no matter what. And again, I say many of you and have the right to be worried about what's happening now in your own communities and your own countries. And I don't want to put Palestine as the issue of the global issue. We're all in this together now, as we're saying. But if we care about this Holy Land, if we come from our religious backgrounds and have a vision for this land where the three faiths that live here, where Palestinians and Israelis can live in peace and dignity and respect, and we believe this, then we should not remain silent about it. We should just have this a continuous conversation. And as I said, with us here, with many organizations and many, many Israelis, we are beginning to have this conversation. What we are talking about now with many Israelis and Palestinians is what is the movement that we want to create post this pandemic. And we're having wonderful conversations as well in this. Many, many Israelis who were, for example, advocating for the Oslo peace process are in contact with us now and saying, yeah, we've been hearing you talk about this equal rights and civil rights, and we should all live together. This thing, Sam, you talk about, we want to hear more about it. What does it look like? And so there is an awakening happening. And this is something that we need to build on. You know, when we talk about change in society, it's like talking about change in habits and patterns of behavior. And there are two ways that I know that change can happen: longevity or a decision. So, you know, the Hebronites, the Jewish community, was lost in the desert for 40 years because for many, and I love when rabbis talk about this, because it had to take a long time to begin to change a behavior from one set to the other. 40 years. Sometimes when you want to stop smoking, they say it takes 40 days to get off the habit. The question is change
They
going
can
to
only
happen?
talk, we can't talk. So
Is change going to happen with longevity or a decision? My fear is that longevity here means many, many people are going to suffer for change to happen. And I say this here and any place in the world. But if people are able to make a decision and to begin voice this decision, and again, not just on Palestine, on the environment. I've talked with friends in Brazil, for example, who are talking about what can we do now to stop this insanity of the corporations in Brazil that continue to destroy forests and continue to destroy land and continue to build these beef farms for the consumers in the West. It has to be a decision, and that means our activism has to go up a notch on all of these issues if we want it to be a decision and not for it to happen through longevity, through time.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Sami. I don't know if you remember me, but I certainly remember you. I just wanted to, I had some other questions, but there's something that you said that really struck me, which is that Palestinians know, how to hunker down because they're so used to being under curfew and all those things. And I can see like a campaign of how you could advise us all in the world. Palestinians giving tips to everyone because they know intimately how to cope with these kinds of situations. And it would sort of be, I don't know, maybe it's silly, but I actually think it could be really powerful.
I think there was an article, Jonathan can correct me, Raja Shehadeh wrote an article in the New York Times that was published yesterday and today about it. So if you go to the New York Times, you could find this article. And I think for me, again, the opportunity where we can just change our behavior in how we relate to the environment, how we relate to the food, how we just go back to the basics of what we need and not just what brings us pleasure, either to our lips or to our taste buds or to our entertainment. And this is an opportunity for all of us, again, to know that we could actually live without having this tremendous amounts of varieties of junk food that we have all become addicted to and used to. Now, in this situation, when Palestinians go and buy shopping, we buy exactly what we need. And if it's one toilet roll of paper, that's what we buy. We don't fill our homes with toilet paper as many people around the world are doing or in the US are doing. So to really understand, it's how to be careful and how to share. I mean, like for me, paradigm shifts happen when decisions are made, and we're looking at this as an opportunity where as many people become more about their safety and their security and maintaining themselves. I hear in the US more weapons have been sold in the last 2 weeks than in the last 3 years. This is insane. To protect me and what I have compiled from my neighbors. I mean, people are not protecting themselves from the Canadians, or like their own citizens they're afraid that their own neighbors from their own community will come and steal their stuff. Well, the best way to protect yourself is by sharing. We have to begin establishing new systems of economy, the system of capitalism, the system of greed, the system of possession, and me has to end. And by sharing, even the concept is, yes, in my mind, rationally, I shouldn't share, I shouldn't give. But by sharing, and this is, we're just starting now talking about a campaign here in Bethlehem, understanding how difficult it is and how people are really don't have finances. We're going to do a campaign where we're asking each household to give 5 shekels, which is $1.50. But to create that culture, and this is how we were in the past. We share, we give, we support each other. This is community. This is the core of what community is. Community is not about how I benefit from the rest. It's how I become part of the rest. This is, again, an opportunity for all of us to engage in.
So I've been doing a lot of reading about Israel-Palestine this last semester. I'm a Michael Smarr student. And I was reading about, during the first Intifada, one of the challenges is how connected the two communities are and how much the Palestine workers go in and are basically building what is oppressing them. So I'm guessing that's still the case from comments I've seen. How will that play into a movement? How do people still eat, have jobs, but disconnect themselves from, they basically take away that permission and that power that Israel has over them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. It's a really good question, and thank you for asking it. I think what has happened to the Palestinian community, like many communities around the world, and especially since the Oslo peace process began, is we have also become a consumerist community, a capitalist consumerist community. And I actually directly blame the Oslo peace process for making this happen and our own leadership for making this happen. The Palestinian Authority, and I don't know if it was conscious or not as a decision, wanted to somehow prove to the rest of the world that we are worthy of a state. And the only framework that we have of what is called a state is the consumerist capitalist systems. If we show them that we have the latest stores to display the latest Gucci and Armani fashions, if we show them that we're driving Mercedes cars, if we show them that we're on the latest mobile phones and buying the latest food products from the world. You know, we never had even we started having KFC and Pizza Hut and Domino's Pizza here to prove to the world that we are worthy of being like you. That means having a state. And I think this is an opportunity for a wake-up call for us as Palestinians. And many of us have been talking about this for some time, that we don't need to depend on Israel so that we can become a high-spending consumerist community and society, that we could create the mechanisms where we return to the land. Home farming, for example, was big during the first Intifada. Palestinians gardened their own home for food products, and I would plant the tomatoes, and my neighbor would plant the cucumbers, and we would make a perfect salad with each other and share it. This is beginning to happen again now. Now Palestinians, certain organizations are now distributing plants for planting for any Palestinian home that wants to do this. And today they were in Beit Jala distributing these plants, and many are excited about it. You have to actually put your name on a list now to get cucumbers and eggplants to plant in your garden. And many of the Facebook, I don't know if you have Palestinian friends who are on Facebook, many Palestinians are now putting pictures of them and young. Like this is the beautiful surprise, is that young men are digging their land and digging their front yards and backyards to begin to plant in them. One of the issues we were facing for a long time is that only the older generation stayed in the farming. And then this is global, as we know. You know, like not many in the young generation farm with their parents. And so now we're seeing this young generation saying, okay, now we're sitting home. We have nothing to do. We have no work. We want to survive. Let us begin planting our gardens like we did. And this time we don't have the Israeli military to stop us from doing this like it did it in the past. So there is a real opportunity now for us again to wake up to the reality of what we became during the Oslo peace process, which is a system that fully depends on foreign aid, and that foreign aid was used for a lot of people to build riches and consumerism and capitalism in our society, and return to our ways of doing things in the indigenous ways of how our ancestors used to do it. So thank you for that.
Hello, Sami. It's
Hi
really
there.
good to see you after 15 years since Poland.
Good to see you.
I'm sending you lots of love and support. My main question is, I'm thinking a lot about individual reparations account and how to move my money at this time. And I'm wondering if you are connected with initiatives of Rebuilding Alliance and crisis, and if you would give us some some of your thoughts about the most effective ways of moving our money to be supportive at this time.
Yeah, we fully support the Rebuilding Alliance initiative, and we're advocating for their work. So this is a great source. And again, all of the networks of different organizations, many organizations, aid organizations for Palestinians, NonViolence International has been a wonderful gather of different actually organizations, and maybe Michael can talk about the different organizations that you provide a hub for that people can also choose to give aid for as well. So there are many, many opportunities for that. We have launched the campaign to raise funds for medical supplies and aid for Palestinians, families who are in need. And this comes again through our connection with NonViolence International. So maybe Michael, you would like to share some of the networks and organizations?
We are supporting a number of really great nonviolent action groups doing work for Palestinian justice. One is the Center for Jewish Nonviolence, which sends over mostly diaspora Americans, but diaspora Jews to Palestine and Israel to do direct action in protest of the occupation and to the apartheid policies of the Israeli government. We have We Are Not Numbers, which is a terrific effort in Gaza, young people who are learning English, learning how to read and write English, write in English, and also to do films, to tell their own stories in their own voices about what it's like to be living in Gaza, a place where the UN said in 2020 it was now going to be uninhabitable for human beings. And yet here we are, 2020. So We Are Not Numbers is a great effort. If you want to be an English mentor, writing mentor for one of these Gazans young people, please go to We Are Not Numbers. There's the Hebron International Resource Network, which is quietly building schools and playgrounds and providing other essential public facilities for Palestinians. And obviously Holy Land Trust is doing great work with its delegations, with its nonviolence training and advocacy work. So these are some of the groups, and I've probably maybe forgotten one or two.
Yeah, and please go to the chat.
Oh, there's one other one, which is the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, which this year has suspended. Every year, the Freedom Flotilla, almost every year, has tried to break the blockade of Gaza by sending boats with humanitarian supplies. At the moment, that's suspended because it's quite expensive, and the Gaza Freedom Flotilla is encouraging folks to give money directly for immediate humanitarian aid to Gaza, given the COVID-19 threat that is now descending upon Gaza. So thanks again, Sami, for your time. Thank you for everybody for coming.
And
Looking
again,
forward.
the chat has many organizations that are being put on it. So please go to the chat and you will see many organizations as well.
Wonderful. Thanks
Great.
again, all of you, for coming, and we hope to see you again at some of these future webinars talking to nonviolent leaders around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We
Blessings.
wish
and
you
love
all the
to
best, Sami.
Thank you to all of us. Thank
We
you.
are all part of one another.